It's not yet. And it is live now. Well, now we get to talk to the abyss. Wait for it. I'm trying to think right here. We know how to start it. This is how. Wait. This is how we start. No one's tuning in. It's just us dancing for nobody.
Well, I think you two look great.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. We already have the largemouth bass complete. What are the odds? I'm so excited. Literally, thank you all for tuning in. If you're watching this, throw a comment. Tell us hello. Tell us your name. Tell us your spirit animal. Tell us where you live. I'm Dillon. This is Matt, I think right under me. And let's just pretend that Evan is this bass. He is the man behind the screen. Evan, say hi so they know you're real.
Hi.
A lot of people think that I get to draw. I'm drawing this. And the answer,
that's just not right.
I'm like, this is not me. I want to make sure I let you know every time. This is not me. Welcome, whether you're watching live, whether you're watching on the replay. If you're watching on the replay, type in the chat replay. Why? Because it's a trick to help the algorithm for more people to see us. I'm Dillon, Matt, Evan. This is Unfound Adventures, Name Change, Tales of Bastunia, Beast, Creation, Ask Me Anything, Ask Us Anything, Fridays. This is the first one. I have no idea how this is going to go, but I'm excited. And I'm excited to see Evan's mastery today. So a little bit of an agenda. What we're going to do is we're going to give you a recap of how we've got here, what we've been working on. We're going to introduce these two men with me, the one and then the guy that is real, I promise. And then we're going to talk about today's beast, who we're drawing it for, why we're drawing it for them, and we're going to start talking a little bit about the archetypes. And then you get to use this time, if you're tuning in, to ask us any questions at all, whether it's about the beast itself, whether it's about us as human beings, whether it's, Evan, what's your hair color? Because I've never seen you before. Or if it's the big picture comic universe, we will give things away on this for the people that are tuning in. Matt, could you do me a favor and check the chat in the group here?
I'm all
that
over.
Would be, you're the man. So let's start off with the beginning. And we should honestly go back even further. No, this comic universe has started in its inception, I would say, 8 years ago. Dillon lived in Africa. I've always wanted to write fiction growing up. I grew up with my grandma. My grandma said I was going to be an author one day. I was like, yep. And then I forgot about it. And then I just joined the world of capitalism, and I got into sales, and I got into consulting, and it took me over to Kenya, where I was a sales consultant. And while I was there, I got big into the religions, big into the mythologies of the area. And it started to get this idea of writing a book came back up. So I started putting some ideas together. Then I flew from Africa back to the United States. I worked for the company that helps people self-publish books. I started as their head of sales. I had the CEO say, hey, Dillon, you should write a book. And it shouldn't be fiction because that takes too long. Write a nonfiction book. So I wrote a nonfiction book. I met some people. I threw away my ideas of a fiction book. And then they came back up thanks to the man that's under me right now, Matt, Mr. Word Guy. Matt and I were both part of this team, big into fiction. So we would get together every Wednesday. We called it Fundamental Bros of Fiction. And we would just talk shop and talk book ideas. So I would say, what, Matt? It was like 5-6 years ago where we started to talk just initial ideas.
It must have been three and some change. It was right before the pandemic.
Okay, 3 and some change. Let's say 4 because that sounds long. That sounds further away. We started talking about novels that we were going to write. And we had a mentor that was a multiple-time best-selling fiction author on Amazon. We would take some ideas to him. Long story short, he completely destroyed my idea, and I had to start from the ground up. Started doing that, approached Matt and said, hey, why don't we write this together? We started writing this story together, and then halfway through, we're like, why don't we turn it into a comic? So for the last 2.5, 3 years, we've been working on this comic. We found Evan through the process is our illustrator. Hi. Evan is real. Say it again.
Hi.
Wow, he's real. We found Evan, and there's a funny story if anyone wants to ask of how I found Evan and how many people hate me in that Facebook community. Brought Evan on, launched our first book the beginning of this year, right, Matt?
Beginning of this year, right?
I think it was
Back
like
in
February,
March.
March. Launched our first book via Kickstarter back in March. You can see that as the background here, Tales of Bastunia. And then we are now launching our second book. Our second Kickstarter ran about 2 months ago. Books should be shipped to me next week, and then we send those out. Now, anything I missed there, Matt, coming up to where we're at?
Anything that you missed, I'll happily cover in my own intro.
Perfect.
And how I got involved in this.
Any regrets?
By me?
Yeah, any regrets within the scope of that timeline you just covered?
Any regrets? Not putting myself out there sooner. I got interviewed on a radio show recently, and the guy asked me, he's like, "Hey, for any aspiring authors out there, like, what advice would you give them? Like, self-publish, publish, or who should you find an illustrator? Or should you try to find a publisher? Where should you publish?" And I was like, it's none of that. It's just get started. I was about to swear. Like, just get started. I think a lot of people are creative and they just never get started with what they care about, and then they die with regret. So I wish I would have got started sooner.
Okay.
Michelle
and
wants
also,
to know, oh yeah, go ahead.
Val, go ahead with the question.
Why do people hate you?
Great question. I would honestly say I was born a 10-pound baby. So it starts with that. It starts with the fact that I was born so big. Most people probably hate me right there. And on top of that, red hair doesn't help. I think orange, it's a scientific fact that orange can provoke hostility. And I don't even have red hair. It's orange. So I think those two things combined, I'm tall, I'm charismatic. People hate what they want. I mean, what else? That's why people hate me.
There's
Only
more
other
reasons
regret.
to hate you than like you at this point.
Exactly. I mean, it is few and
Just
far
natural.
between reasons to like me.
Why do people in that group where we found Evan hate you?
Okay. People, that's the other regret.
Great
Evan,
question. Great question.
How I introduced myself to that group, because when we were first looking for an illustrator, I had a buddy who used to live in the Philippines, and he did a children's book. Josiah, if you're watching, I love you. And he said, "Hey man, this is a Facebook group. Like, just reach out and tell these people what you want." And I'm young in the process, and I'm confident. I'm like, okay, I'm going to tell the people from the Philippines what I'm looking for in an illustrator. And I wrote, and I wanted to paint the picture of this is a long-term play. Like, hey, if you work with us, you could years, like, it's consistent revenue coming in, right?
Oh, you asked for free work, didn't you?
I didn't ask for free work. I think it's worse. I basically said, hey, I would love character designs from you. What our goal is, my partner and I, Matt at the time's goal is we want to write a series of comics that we see going, hundreds, if not thousands of chapters. I'd love to churn out 10 books a year. That's where I went wrong. I'm like, I'd love to churn out 10 books a year, just so it's good, it's consistent business for you. And I had a bunch of people in this group say, please pick me. Please pick me. I would love to. Here's some ideas. And we found some okay illustrators in there, okay artists. I think they're early in the process and they're eager to get started. But I was confident because I got a bunch of people saying, hey, we would love to work with you. Then I talked to my dungeon master, who has amazing artwork in his book. And I'm like, where did you find your art? And he's like, I have a Facebook group from people from the UK, South America, and North America, not the Philippines. Yeah. You can ask these people. So I just copied and pasted what I said to the first group, because it seemed to go well, into this group. And the response that I got from these people were, how dare you unintelligent, ignorant man, ask us for this much work. There's no way we can do 10 books a year. What did they say? Your goals are irrational and lack any follow through. You don't know what you do to this community and the type of illustrators that have health problems due to overwork. It was hundreds of comments, a bunch of likes on the comments that threw me down, a bunch of angry emojis on my post, but it tricked the algorithm enough to have the lovely Evan throw his name in the ring and not be offended. And I reached out to him, and we've loved this. Look at that bass. Look at what it's led us to this bad.
Yes. This is what I bring to the project. I paint fish. This is my talent right here.
There's another question. I don't know who it is because it just keeps saying Facebook user. I will answer that in a second. All of that to say, it brought us an illustrator where we're like, we need to be able to pay this illustrator because Evan lives in San Francisco. No, but Evan, very, very good at what he does. We want to make sure that we're paying for good quality illustrations, formatting, all that. So we did Kickstarters. We raised about how much? $5,000, and then after the Kickstarter, about another $1,000. So $7,000 in the first Kickstarter, and then just did our second Kickstarter. And during our second Kickstarter, it opened up this brand new possibility of we've created an incredible world. Matt has created a map. He's done a bunch of world building. He's starting to talk about the cultures. We're putting it out there on social media, and we're creating a world that people can contribute to, specifically kids. Everybody in the world of Bastunia, up until a couple of years ago, is gifted a spiritual beast upon birth that signifies their calling in life. We'll talk about the paths and the type of beasts. But everybody has this spiritual beast that's next to them at all times, that every time they look at it, they say, this is what I'm meant to do in the world. They get to find themselves through this beast. And we created, what we didn't realize is we created archetypes for kids to start to create in, see themselves through. And the kids wanted to start to create beasts. So during the second Kickstarter, Matt had an incredible idea. What was your incredible idea, Matt? What was the tier called?
What was the tier called?
The tier was called the Beastborn tier, where people were able to, I'm just going to keep talking. People were able to create their own beast and have it featured in our book. They could either create a beast for themselves or sponsor somebody else's beasts. That's why you see Evan drawn here today. That pretty much...
not exactly why you see me drawing here today.
Okay. It's what you will be drawing here today.
There you go.
I think Evan got in. He's drawn a largemouth bass spiritual beast today, and he's like, oh, I've never drawn a largemouth bass. You're giving me it's so hard to work with this. And then he gets in, and in the last 12 minutes, that's what he's created. So Evan's very humble. Speaking of Evan, I'm going to introduce Matt. And we're going to introduce, so I'm the fool in front. I'm going to introduce these two fools as well. First, we're going to start with Matt. And so I can quit talking. You can talk for a little bit longer. Where do you live? Where are you from? Where are you from? Where do you live? How did you get started in Unfound Adventures? And I think the coolest question, why? Because I could just be talking by myself here. Why did you want to be a part of it?
Yeah. So like you, like Dillon, I am from Southeast Michigan. About an hour and some change away from Port Huron, where you live. I grew up in Brighton. Moved down to Texas. We never met until Dillon hired me at self-publishing school, now selfpublishing.com, as my manager. And so he kind of filled you in on those gaps. But eventually it was like October, maybe September of 2019. And you were in charge of some incentives, some like, let's do something challenging as a team. Can we get 10 people in our company to publish books by the end of the year? And I've been wanting to write a book, so I volunteered to be one of the 10. And so Dillon and I, we published books like basically the exact same time, December of 2019. I think mine was like the 26th. Yours might have been like the 19th or something like that. I remember reading your book heading home for Christmas or something like that. The Happiness Gap by Dylan Barr. And then fast forward just a few months. There it is. Fast forward a few months. Both of us, we weren't writing nonfiction because we love nonfiction. We read fiction. We love fiction. We grew up around stories. We both love telling stories. And so that's when we started meeting weekly to discuss our fiction projects. And I maybe like 6 months, maybe a year into meeting every week, I remember, Dillon, you asked me, after maybe reading my book, like you've got the gift of gab. I'll give you that. I prefer more written communication and more being the word guy. And you said, man, I hate you sometimes when I read your writing. And you said things like that. You said, will you just write my book for me? You know, this book that we've been working on for so long. And I'm like, no, man, like we've been working on our books in these meetings for months. I'm making huge progress on my own story. And this has taken me a long time too, you know, to write this is a fiction book that I've been working on essentially for 15 years. I'm like, I'm not going to take you up on that invitation and delay my own book. But as soon as it switched forms from a novel into, you were getting really into manga, graphic novels, comic books. The idea was born to make your book into a comic book. And then it made sense to join forces. Then it was like, oh, it would be really cool to create something that is one part comic book, one part written prose, like written short story. That's new. And I saw it as an opportunity to write a chapter at a time. And instead of being like, all right, I'll be done with this project in a year, I could write a chapter in 2-3 weeks. And so it synced up a lot more with my creative flow. As to why it made sense, aside from is syncing up with my creative flow, I think that a big question that we've been kicking back and forth for the last few years really is like, what kind of company are we? What is Unfounded Ventures when it comes down to it? Are we a comic book company? Are we a storytelling company? Because that's, you know, that's partially true. But especially when we started diving into the Kickstarters and determining why would somebody invest their money in this hypothetical project? You know, even though we know it's going to come to fruition, like when they invest $100, $200, $300, are they investing in a storytelling company? Are they investing in us because they like us? Or is there some greater mission that is underlying all of this effort? And we've been fortunate enough to have grandparents and parents and teachers and people over the years who, when we draw something, we write something, this is really good. Wow, I really like this aspect of it. When we're out in our yard playing games and it's like, oh, who are you out there fighting with your fake sword? You know, and like really nurturing that creativity. So it became, we realized like almost in a flash that our purpose, our mission behind these comics is to nurture the creativity in children and to delight the inner children within people of all ages. It's like there's something in this project, in these books for people who are, you know, 7 years old or 70 years old. Whether you like comics or you like the short stories or you like, you know, being involved in other ways. So once we kind of got more clear on our mission, it actually became more important to me than writing my own novel.
Hell yeah, man. I think it kind of goes back to what Evan was talking about as any regrets. And I was like, I wish I would have started sooner. This is not what we envisioned. This is definitely not what I envisioned when I was first thinking of a book. But I like it way more. It's like, so I think just getting started, you don't know who you're going to meet. You don't know what twists are going to be thrown on this. You don't know what talents you're going to come across, what new ideas. It's kind of to answer Bella's question. I think we'll answer it more after Evan introduces himself, but I view this now as, and I get to take my ego out of it a bit, is we've created really cool framework for a bunch of people to work within. This is not the world that I thought it was going to be when I started. I think it's better. And I think it's because it was just a simple framework. And then Matt was like, hey, will you pass me the baton and trust me to run with it? And I'm like, yeah. And then to see what he's created and what we're creating together, you know, this links back to a deep desire of mine, is just everybody learning and growing with each other. And then in my mind, I'm thinking a manga style pictures. And if, like, for Evan is like American animation style illustrator. And he'll probably correct me with the exact term. But, I mean, kind of to kick it over to Evan. Same with you, Evan. I love this drawing, by the way. Evan is drawing today a largemouth bass-inspired beast that is a defender medic. So it is the healer. We're going to talk about that archetype in a bit here. It is the healer beast in Bastunia. But with that said, Evan, where are you from? We know where you live now. How did you join, and why have you stayed with us?
All right. The last question, I have no idea how to answer. There's any number of other things I could be spending my time on, but I find myself drawn back again and again to Dillon and Matt's charisma and more importantly, their faith in this project and what it potentially means. You know, they've shared their grand vision with me. So it's I hate to pay either of them compliments without somehow making it a backhanded critique or insult of some kind, but it's genuinely inspiring. So there, that's done. Moving on.
What's inspiring? What would you say is inspiring about it? I'm kidding. Keep going.
Moving on. I'm originally from Miami, Florida. That's where my wife and I grew up. And now I'm in San Francisco. That's where I live. And as Dillon mentioned, intimated, it's a very expensive place to live. So by day, I am in fact a software developer, like 99% of the city. And the rest of my time is spent typically as an art director or creative manager or contract manager for artists. That's something that I did for a long time before becoming a software developer. And I, try to nurture that and keep that book of business and dream, if you will, alive wherever I can. And so that's the capacity in which I came on to Unfounded Ventures. It was originally really just to illustrate their comics. And that was a whole process. There were art tests and everything. But now, I get to be much more involved in a lot of the content, especially in its visual design that gets put out in service of this world and this IP. And that's really, where I live and breathe in terms of fulfillment. So it's been a great match for me. Let's see, what were your other questions, Dillon? I've already forgotten.
No, I think that's most of them. How you started, and I guess my question would have been how you started, because coming back to that Facebook post I was getting ripped up. There was at least 10 comments where people were very rude to me.
Well, let me just say, I'm genuinely surprised. Maybe I don't recall the content of your original post. It could be that you were just completely callously insensitive in it. I'm willing to believe that, but I genuinely do not recall anything incendiary from the post when I was like, hey, this could be ignorant. Fun.
I like to think blissfully ignorant.
All right, ignorant, naive, however you'd like to put it. But I'm either way, I'm genuinely surprised that you got that kind of response from a group of illustrators. So I don't know what to attribute that to. It's definitely counter to most of my experience with illustrators, including illustrators sourced from, like a Facebook group, as opposed to, say, an agency, where typically the lines of communication can be pretty different. The expectations can be pretty different. So yeah, I'm surprised. I have no explanation for that except your winning personality must have come right on through. Yeah. And tipped him off.
Beautifully protecting your own kind. We love that, Evan. Was just saying yes at the time was just like, hey, it's another person asking. Like, be honest. Was it like, hey, this is another person asking for work. I have work. Or was there something that you remember in the post? You're like, oh, this sounds like does that make sense?
Oh, this sounds like as in why I responded to your post.
Yeah, why you responded. Yeah.
Well, I love doing comic work. Now, that said, the reason why I asked, do you have any regrets at the beginning, is because everyone who has never done a comic before grossly underestimates the amount of work that goes into a comic. And you're right. You were quoting or requesting rather, 8 to 10 books a year. And me being me, I probably said, yeah, we can do that. When more realistically, we're probably going to end up doing 2 to 4, at least to start with. So yes, the amount of work that goes into comics is just always exponentially more than anybody expects. And
it is valid.
That's the kind of stuff that I could talk about till I'm blue in the face, but I don't think that's what our audience really wants to hear.
This is a perfect segue, actually, if I could interject with this question. So from someone watching, they said, how do you guys balance the ideas between you and Matt and Evan, all our different, Evan's interpretation of the story, Dillon and I bringing ideas into the story?
It's a great question. Who's that for?
Oh, if it was to me, I just got that I was supposed to. If you're in the group, you're not going to be able to share this. Matt, I just saw that question. Just because it's a private group. I think eventually we can put this to like a more of a public channel, but this first one. Go ahead if you want to.
So, I'll lead into it. I mean, we have a pretty clear handoff between different segments of the story. I mean, when Dillon and I get together and we kick around ideas, I know that I might be sharing an idea and I think it's a good idea and I want to work it in. I may even say, let's work it in here. But most of the time, you are at the very beginning, storyboarding, plotting, putting together the tale. I kind of left that out at the beginning when I was talking about our differences. Is you are a like master plotter, and I just kind of like to show up and put words down. And so I always admired that about Dillon, that you'd have so meticulous with your planning, and you cared so much about doing the research on like, what's a good story? What are the arcs? Let me watch this whole series of, this TV show and see, okay, this is the training arc and this is that arc. And I was like, okay, like that stuff is interesting, but way more to you than to me. So you handle a lot of that stuff, and I'm happy to turn that over to you. I think Evan and I might feed in ideas there, but mostly that's you.
Yeah.
I get to, once it's plotted, then I kind of sit back while Evan takes the reins. Maybe you guys work together on the actual picture, the comic.
Yeah, I mean, I can certainly speak to that. So the first book, not Matt, Dillon. I get them both confused. They're both tall white guys with beards. Dillon had storyboarded, and forgive me, Dillon, I use the term very loosely, the comic. And so he sent over his images of like, okay, this is what this sequence should look like. This is what should be happening here. And their utility was debatable. Dillon is not
I draw
the artist,
stick figures is what
that is not his domain of
here.
expertise.
Yeah, look at those things.
Yeah, he would hand them, and I'd be like, "Cool, thanks," and then I would basically rework them. So by book 2, he was like, "Is this useful to you?" And I'm like, "Not really." And that still holds true, but he is very helpful in more in the written word. So in the story beats, the individual moments that are happening throughout the narrative, he does provide the visual cues and call outs that he feels are essential. Like, okay, this is going to be Joan standing in the foreground. We see James Nardi in the background. We get a glimpse of Buntu over here, et cetera, et cetera. And that's enough information for me to figure out how to effectively stage a moment that makes sense visually, works with the flow of the rest of the page and the other panels it's interacting with, and services the story.
Look how bad this is. What was I? It's crazy. Like, so anyone's like, get started. This is what I mean. Like, just get started. Do
it's
something.
True. It's true. It is bad. It's very bad. It's very true. But Dillon is absolutely correct. Getting started is the most important thing. It's going to be bad, and you got to get comfortable with it being bad until it's not.
Bad guys always have spiky hair, though, clearly. So you nailed the bad guy look.
I'm pretty sure the very first picture I have, it's hard to see there, Matt. I wanted to make like bloodshot eyes in the main bad guy. I was like, I'm gonna put it out there. It is nuts, though. We get it. Put it away, dude. Look at the nose. I was gonna actually storyboard it, non-stick figures like that the entire way. It's bad. It is nuts, though. I was doing a master class, and again, anyone coming late, ask any questions. This is an Ask Me Anything while Evan draws a really cool beast for one of the kids that is sponsored through our last Kickstarter. This is Cooper. He's drawing a largemouth bass inspired healer beast. So feel free to ask questions about the writing process or the drawing process with Evan. If you're an aspiring illustrator, you can ask us questions about plotting. Coming back to, because the question is, how do we balance all of it? I storyboarded this initially because I watched a master class with Neil Gaiman. If anyone is familiar with Neil Gaiman, Sandman, and that was his process of, he says, before I do anything, I do like a really rough storyboard. And then I look and I say, how do I want my panels to look? So he gets that feel. And then he takes that and he plots. And he says, this is what I want in each panel. This is what I want the expressions to be. This is what I'm seeing. And you send that to an illustrator, because Neil Gaiman, he said, even if you're not an illustrator, you can do it. And that was sparked me of like, holy shit, I can give it a try. So the only thing that I did different was light plot first, like light plotting. We have the first arc completely plotted, the second arc completely like lightly plotted. And then I've been going chapter by chapter to say, will this fit 25 to 30 pages? Because the typical—
How many chapters in an arc?
Typically, any chapters in an arc, you're going to have anywhere between 10 to 15. I mean, there are some arcs that are way longer than that in the manga world, but rule of thumb, 10 to 15 chapters in an arc. Chapters are also like what we're putting out in books. So each book we put out is one chapter of comic and one chapter of written prose, which is what Matt does. All of this to say, when I was drawing out my crappy stick figure drawings and saying it looks like this, this, and this. Thank you for not swearing. We should do a tracker for how many times Dillon doesn't swear and could, because this is for kids. It was nuts to see the end result from Evan. Even when Evan, you don't see my bad stick figure drawings. I'm like, whoa, that's kind of what I envisioned. Like, I would honestly say 80% of the time that is like right how I would do it if I was talented, if I had any talent at all other than acting like a fool and being charismatic and plotting. So it is crazy how it goes. And I'm a big believer, like the philosophical answer to that question though, Bella, is I love creating frameworks and then being like taking my ego out of it enough to let other people play within it, because you would think that's frustrating, but then when they can add to something that you wanted, I think it's really beautiful.
This idea of boundlessness.
Yeah. My deep desire for me, so this is going to get corny, so Evan, you can just mute me if you want. I was reading a book by Sadhguru called The Yogi's Guide to Joy. And it's when I was living in Africa and I had enough time every morning to do Tai Chi, yoga, meditate, long walk, read. Thank you very much, whoever put that in the chat. I was reading this book and he talks about this concept of boundlessness. And for him, it was a physical concept. He's a yogi from India, and he would meditate on this rock for like years. And he said one time he meditated on this rock and he just melted. He didn't know where he stopped and the rock he was sitting on began. And he said it was ecstasy, and he got out of the meditation. He was crying, and I'm reading it, and I'm like, cool. That's never going to happen for me. Like, I'm not a yogi. No effing way is that happening for me. But the concept of boundlessness, of not knowing where something stops and something begins, I took into my practice at the time, a business consultant, and listening to friends. And it's like, I have learned so much in my life from different people that I met. And I would learn a lesson from, let's say, Matt. And if I incorporate Matt's lesson into my life, that's a piece of Matt that's with me. So instead of from a physical standpoint, I kind of looked at it from like a mental, emotional, spiritual standpoint. Or if I could teach someone something and they take that lesson and incorporate it into their life, that's a piece of me with them that extends past me. For some reason, that like anytime I talk about it, just lights me up. And that has been able to play out in this comic through Matt, as I can give him a framework that he takes into his life and he expounds on it. And then it's like, it's fed right back to me into this comic world. And then Evan adds, and it's this comic just keeps getting bigger and bigger. And where we see this going is, young kids being able to tap into their imagination and creativity through the frameworks, which I think we should probably get into next, Matt.
Yeah.
Being able to tap into these frameworks to trigger their imagination and say, oh, like if we were to just tell a kid, think of something fantasy, that's way too broad. But if we were to say, hey, there's these 3 types of beasts, which one resonates? And then there's these 4 type of archetypes. When you can give them boxes to think within, frameworks, they can expand on it. And now we have those kids teaching lessons, or even not even teaching lessons, but putting their creation into a world that someone could learn from. I think that's really, really cool. I think we don't have a lot of outlets to let kids tap into that creativity. Which kind of comes to, Matt, if you want to talk about, and if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask. If you want to talk about, Matt, in Bastunia, the frameworks that we created, let's start broad, right? Yeah. So in Bastunia, everybody is gifted For the longest time, everyone was gifted upon birth a spiritual beast that represents their calling in life. We are not that, I'm not that creative, so we call them callings, actually, in Bastunia. And there are 3 paths. We're not going to talk about the initial 3. We're going to talk about the 3 paths we're at right now. Matt, what are those 3 paths, and how would you describe them?
The
bass's mouth is getting larger.
So nice.
Now we see the connection to the fish.
Yes.
If you had a calling and it developed these giant wings, these massive antlers, and just kind of beckoned you to ride it around the world, that would probably be an explorer. So there's explorers, there's builders, and there's defenders. If you had one that was like more of a beaver and it could gnaw up trees and help build log cabins, builder, obviously. This is more in the group that we're talking about today. This is my beast, my calling, Chugach. Named it after the mountains outside of Anchorage in Alaska. And it sits here on my skin kind of as a reminder to me to recognize those things in my life that are worth protecting and to protect them, to defend them. Because you don't want to take things for granted. And so explorers, builders, and defenders. These are the main 3.
Dillon. God.
Yes.
I'm going to keep doing that.
So you got it. You're even better. You're better. Let's stop sharing mine. Let's bring Evans back.
The worst thing is my brother is also named Matt.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think that's where it's coming from. I just get this natural sibling annoyance from Dillon, and I just feel like I'm in mid-argument every time I talk to him.
You should meet my siblings. This is Matt, if you want to talk on it. So Matt, having this idea for Chugach, having a wolf-elk hybrid, right? So he gave just that picture to Evan, and this is what Evan came up with. This is what we want to do with our followers who want to say, hey, I want to have a beast. I want to have a companion that could be featured in this world. Anything else you want to say on it, Matt? Yeah.
So I think one of the things that people struggle with is to prioritize their lives in any given time, to really recognize, like, I want to do so many things all the time, and how do I choose between all the things that I want to do? And so these callings often can represent paths that you're walking. And so if somebody had a Chugach, for example, this is my defender beast. And if I wanted to grow with Chugach and let him, really it's an it, and let it develop, it's going to develop in accordance with how my spirit develops, how well I protect the things that I find worth protecting, how much I walk that spiritual path, how well on a given moment to moment do I do in recognizing the things that are really valuable and making sure that they're still here tomorrow. And that's kind of the spirit of the defender is not, you think defender, sometimes you think, like a warrior or a soldier. And there are soldiers that are defenders too. We'll kind of get into some of the specific classes or the specific archetypes, but I generally think of them as the people who can look around the world and they can say, these things are valuable. And how do I need to be in this moment to keep these things around?
Mm-hmm. The way that I'll talk of defenders, I always have this analogy of Matt and I were going over it one day. It's like picturing a guy that wakes up to start the day, has his super good morning routine, makes his coffee or makes his tea, steps outside, stretches, and just looks at all of creation, just has this existential moment where he can take in everything that's around him and everything that's been given to him from whatever higher power or just sheer luck, but just has this, the way that he views everything that he's been given is through this lens of nothing but love. And thank you so much for this gift of life. How can I preserve this? The relationships that I have in my life, the family that I have, the routines. Like, I come from a small town, and the small town that I live in, I think of defenders, of people that just I think a lot of times people can look negatively on that, but the way that I view it is these people love what they have. It's like, why would I rock? Like, this is amazing. How can I preserve? How can I protect what I have to the utmost? And then there's other paths. We're going to talk about the explorer path and the builder path on different AMAs, but specifically within the defender path, because that is also a lot to say. Hey, you can protect, you can preserve, you can help the people. Like, that's a lot. So Matt and I said, how can we create another archetype within the defender path? Evan, you keep writing. I'm going to share my screen here real quick again. So there's 4 classes, and Matt, if you want to get Cooper's picture up, there's 4 classes of, I wish I could, here we go, slideshow. Boom. 4 classes of defenders. We have, and Matt, you can step in if I'm out of line with any of these here. We have the vanguards, right? So if you're a defender, you're like, how can I preserve this? You have all this love, but the vanguards are those, like, the tip of the spear mentality of, I am going to go out. These are the warriors, the fighters, the leaders. How can I lead and be the tip of the spear for the people around me? Really the people that are leading from the front. You have shields, who are going to be the people that are like, hey, put it on me. I'll take the damage. If I need to be in the front lines to do so, or the back lines to do so, you tell me who to protect, and I'm going to make sure I can protect them. I'm going to make sure to take that brunt. The larger personalities. I am a defender. I am a defender shield when I take these quizzes. Stealth, which would be right over here, far right, which are, I always like to say they're like the shinobi. They're the ninjas. They are the behind the scenes cunning defenders. And then we have the medics, which are the people that naturally are there to want to heal others, want to be there for others, want to support others, right? I think of the support role in my favorite video game, Overwatch. It's like, that's what the medic is. And that is Cooper's beast, who we're going to be talking about. Cooper. It's also my mom who took these quizzes. It's my mom to a T. If anyone here knows the Enneagram test, it's like a natural 2, the helper, is probably going to be a defender medic. So as we started talking to people about this and creating these archetypes, we started off by talking to a school. So I started talking to schools, made a bunch of mistakes. Go ahead, Matt.
Before you jump into that, I just want to say in the chat right now, I posted the quiz where you can see what beast type you would be, which defender type you would be. So you can take the quiz that Dillon's referencing.
See if you can get one of these. We took these into classes, and I was telling the kids, I'm like, hey, builder, explorer, defender, which one are you? And of course, other kids are like, I want to be all of them. And I'm like, you're giving away the lesson of this whole comic. No, pick one. And then you pick, it's like, okay, are you a defender, shield, medic? And they started to get it a little bit more, but it gave them frameworks to add, their beast to. And then from there, wow, this is getting really good, Evan. From there, I was able to speak with a good friend of mine who was a play therapist. She went into occupational therapy, and she kind of like found the niche of being a play therapist. And she works with children with mental or cognitive delays. And through her, she's like, hey, I have a kid that I think would be really good for this. And his alias is Cooper. And Cooper has what is called PDA, which is pathological demand avoidance. And it's a form of autism, from what the little that I know. And basically, he'll have a nervous system shutdown if you tell him what to do. If you're to say, hey, we're going to go swing, no. Fight like hell. Fight like heck. The hell's not bad. To just not do it. There is a traumatic response, and he'll shut down. But if you put him in a room with a swing in it, and you say, hey, what do you want to do? There's a good chance he might say, I want to swing. So really giving him, like letting him step forth. And I could imagine the patience that it takes to walk someone through it. But my friend was telling me, she's like, hey, Bastunia's perfect, because you can talk to this kid and you're not telling him what he is. He's saying what he is. So she's like, I'd love for you to talk with him. And if you talk with him, and if you're joining us, AMA, ask us any question in the chat. She's like, if you talk with him, I just want you to know there's a good chance 3 minutes into the conversation, he just stops. Because that is sometimes when he feels like he's being put into a box, he just kind of shuts down and walk away. She's like, sometimes I go to work with him in the first 5 minutes, he just doesn't want to hang out with me. We just sit there. And I'm like, that's a lot of pressure. So I ended up getting on a call with him and, you know, telling him about the world that we're building and telling him about the types. And we talked for 58 minutes. He had to go, is what caused the end of this. And what he added to his beast, we're going to share that now. His beast is called Floofy. This is Evan's take on it.
Oh, you didn't tell me the name.
Floofy. I mean, it was just so you know, Floofy. It was for him. It was a joke. He wanted me to be Floofy McFloofy. I couldn't share my. I couldn't. He didn't want me to. He didn't want to see what I look like. So I basically just I couldn't even have my Zoom picture. I had to take my picture down and write Floofy McFloofy. And then he wanted his beast. He just said Floofy. But this is his beast. He's 8 years old. It's based on a largemouth bass. It lives in a swamp. Huge jaw. Other animals make it grow. He's born with a gift, and this is a big one. It makes the confidence of his human stronger when he opens his mouth. He said being around it, he's like, this is what we love about what we're building is and I'm going to make up the dog's name too. And he talks to his mom. He's like, it's kind of like how Sergeant is for me. Sergeant is his therapy dog. So he's starting as an 8-year-old to take himself into a realm of imagination and creativity and find self-awareness through it and find the power that he has, right? Because I ended up chatting with him, and the first thing was it gives him confidence. And second thing is this beast has the intuition to know, to defender medic, it has the intuition to know when people around it need help. And when people around it need help or to be healed, it opens its mouth. And he told me that it's 4 feet long, but it can open its mouth up to 7 feet. So it's got a huge jaw. And anytime he opens his mouth, it's almost this healing power that goes out towards the people around it. And an 8-year-old said to his mom, and he's like, it's crazy, Mom. It's like I'm describing myself as I draw. Like him saying that out loud is like, wow. So this is what he created. The last thing, I think I can now say this story without crying, but I did cry with Matt. The last thing that I think is incredible about this is Cooper grew up with both of his parents. The traumatic responses he had, not related to either parent, it seems like, but he was naturally close to his mom, always close to his mom, always close to his mom. And it was really difficult for his dad. And me being a dad now, I can empathize with the dad of like, Evan, I don't know if you feel this too, but like there's sometimes if the kid's crying in my arms and my wife takes him and he stops crying, I'm like, oh, you're better than me. Like this young kid, like 5 years of his life was attached to his mom's hip, and the dad struggled, and the dad finally got close and found an outlet to share with his son, with Cooper, and it was fishing. And I remember telling my mom this story, and I was telling her, I'm like, yeah, I told her that, and she's like, wow, isn't that awesome? And I'm like, yeah, for him, I'm thinking through the lens of Cooper. I'm like, yeah, through the lens, like, pretty awesome that for him to move back to, or bring it back to something that he really loves doing. And she goes, no, isn't it really awesome for his dad? Like, couldn't you imagine, like, as the father thinking, you don't have the same space in this kid's life as mom does, and you're going to be second fiddle. And this kid has an opportunity to create the spiritual calling that represents his life, and he brings it back to something that you two love doing together. And I was like, I did it without crying, and I was like, dang, that is really cool. So if we can create any frameworks to turn this, I love you, Cooper, but into this, for this kid to say, whoa, this is the power of my imagination. I'm all about it. I don't want to do anything else. This is what I would love to do. And I just get to play middle ground between this and Evan, which brings me to a much more logistical question to Evan.
Mm-hmm.
Evan, this is what you had to work with.
Yes.
Love the.
Yes,
I love
it is.
He gave me the best ideas, but how do you start to picture this? I mean, I don't know if you picture it in the very beginning, but like, where do you start in the drawing process? How do you like, you want to put your own flair on it because we don't want to obviously be a replica. Like, walk us through your process, man. And if you have any questions, put them in the chat.
Yeah, please do. Well, obviously, I start with drawing a largemouth bass. No, seriously, not to diminish the importance of that like aspect of the visual, building the visual Rolodex. I mean, this is inspired by a largemouth bass. We know that it's important for Cooper for it to be reflective of a largemouth bass, to recall a largemouth bass. Like that's very much thematically critical to this. So I genuinely and literally started with drawing a largemouth bass, and that gets me acclimated to, you know, what does a largemouth bass look like? What makes it look like a largemouth bass? Because I honestly don't draw a lot of fish in general, but unless I had been drawing largemouth bass, let's see how many times I can say largemouth bass, on a regular basis, it's very unlikely that I would have been able to just pull that out of thin air. So that's what I do. I look at reference of the fish, I draw the fish, and that's my starting point. Now, where to go from there is all about how do I take this and build on Cooper's idea and turn it into a fantastical creature that both has some kind of appeal and fits within the narrative and, you know, satisfies Cooper's creative brief. All of those things. And so that's where the challenge of design comes in. You know, this being a Defender medic meant that we definitely weren't going to go monsterish with it. Definitely wasn't going to be scary. It wasn't going to look fearsome. And if you ever look at a largemouth bass with its mouth open, it's terrifying. It's terrifying. If you're anything other than a human, it's a terrifying thing to see. So I was like, okay, how am I going to take this and make it feel a little different? And so I'm not sure that I've nailed it here, but in fact, I don't think I have. But the goal, what I'm going for, is I want him to feel less like he's, you know, about to eat something and invoking that kind of peril, and more like he's singing, more like this kind of operatic belt. Because the whole idea behind this creature is, and I'm just saying he for the sake of heteronormative reflex, this creature does not have gender identity. Anyway, and a lot of this comes where was I going? Singing. He's just kind of belting out like an operatic singer, because the idea is when his jaw unhinges and his mouth opens this wide, that's when he inspires confidence. You know, kind of like for the D&D players out there, it would be
Bardic inspiration.
Bardic inspiration. And so it needs to feel more like Bardic inspiration and less like hellish rebuke.
Yeah.
And so that's very much what I'm aiming for, and probably what I'll continue to try to focus on for the posturing, the staging, and the way that mouth is opening. I want it to feel like something good and welcoming and cool, rather than something terrifying and about to eat a smaller creature.
Yeah. There's a question in the chat, which I'm going to get to. Obviously, Evan is being very humble, so you can tell him how bad he is in the comments, just to fuel his negative self-talk. But it sounds like, Evan, correct me if I'm wrong, having the archetypes of, Defender, Builder, Explorer, and then having the sub-archetypes, in this case, of Vanguard, Shield, Medic, and Stealth, helps you with at least where do you start from? Is that true?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't want it to just feel like just a random creature that could be anything. This is somebody's path, somebody's calling, somebody's. This is very much tied to somebody's path in life, and so the difference between a beast that belongs to an explorer and the difference between a beast that belongs to a builder, as Matt said, you know, if something sprouts wings and compels you to ride it, it's probably not a builder, and I want that to ring true through the designs as well. Obviously, there's more complexity to that, and there will be more complexity to that as the comic continues to develop. But that's the idea. Like, you should be able to look at a beast and have an idea of what calling it represents.
Yeah, this is a good segue. Perfect segue. So hold your thought for a second. Bella has asked in the chat: is there more pressure making beasts for other people? than drawing them for the comic story, knowing that it is reflective of a real person's past.
Yes, it definitely is. I mean, I think this is a good direction for Cooper's Beast, because I feel like it meets what was defined in his brief and his drawing. And it feels like it could fit within the narrative. And I could comfortably put this in the comic and be like, yep, that fits in the world, which is a whole other design battle to be fought. But Cooper could say, well, it doesn't look like a largemouth bass. And he would be right. And if Cooper wants a largemouth bass that is larger than life and flies, then that's what Cooper will get. And so this could be completely unusable by those metrics.
I would still love to use it.
I mean, so you know what I mean. I'm not going to like throw it in the trash, set my iPad on fire, but you know, this may or may not be Cooper's Beast. This is just my interpretation live on screen of a largemouth bass spirit beast for a medic.
I love it. And I think that's the cool thing, Matt. I want to get to a point where you can kind of say, and we have about 5-10 minutes, so we'll slowly start wrapping up. If there's any other questions, really cool to have as many people watching this as I didn't think this many people would watch. So thank you for continuing to ask questions. If you want to either ask a question or say what your path is right now in life, what your archetype is right now in life, feel free to throw it in the chat. So it does sound like
that when you moved from Colorado back to Michigan, it was like very much a changing in path for you, right? Like going back to your hometown with the thought of having kids and being near your family, kind of going from what, because you're very much walking a defender path now, right?
Yeah, I would say so. For the longest time, like having this explorer path, which we'll talk in other weeks of, this wonder, this philosophy, this let me get outside my comfort zone and just see who I am, and this adventurer, this like adventurous spirit. And that was my first beast that we drew. His name's and he lives in the organism, which we're going to show it looks like we're going to show the map here in a second. But now getting to a part of my life, having a kid, getting married, coming up on our 2-year anniversary, coming back to my hometown and loving going to men's league hockey every week. Like that's like a badge of honor that I carry when we win a game. It's something that I want to talk about. Going to karaoke with my sister on Wednesdays. It's like these small routines and like finding connection in it and being like, I would do whatever I can for you is starting to walk into this path of defender path. And I think a lot of people, I had one person in the book itself, someone asked me, they're like, hey, you said everyone's born with a beast, but it seems like in book number 1, James has 4. Like, it's not like, is this a plot hole? And to answer that question for anyone that's here, it's for the longest time in Bastunia, people could have multiple beasts. They could have up to 3. James is a unique case where his defender beasts were twin beasts. He has twin foo dogs. We're going to see him more in the second book. Stay tuned for that. But some people would have 1, and they would just walk the builder path their whole life. Some people know other people like that, right? And they just want to build, they want to grow, they want to stamp their name into the legacy, like the annals of history. Some people want to walk multiple paths. I feel like I've been walking multiple paths in my life. So in Bastunia, that was the case. But the God gifted you, like the God would have gifted me right now from shifting in Colorado, coming to Michigan, a new calling. And the God would say, nurture this calling, see what you can make of it. And as I walk that defender path more, as I become that protector and that shield, my calling evolves. It matures rapidly, not like a Pokemon, but like rapid maturation. So yeah, I think that's the cool part about it. And then it's starting to ask yourself, and this is where I want you to come in, Matt. I'm about to share the screen. Is like, where would you live? Where would a beast like this be in Bastunia? Like, so we want to we have a worksheet that will give our backers, if they choose to create a beast for themselves or somebody else, and we'll ask questions. What's your path? What's your archetype? What does it look like size-wise, color-wise? Describe it. Does it look like a mythical creature? Does it look like a regular creature? That's why largemouth bass comes in. But then the next question we'll ask is, where would it live in Bastunia? So I'm going to go ahead and share this. Matt created an incredible map map. And to kind of give a visual representation of the world. Now, it is a continent. We can talk about that on another stream. But, Matt, do you want to talk about your inspiration for this and how it came to be and all that jazz?
Oh, yeah. I remember.
We'll go 10 more.
Beautiful. Any of my favorite fantasy novels have always come with the world. Not all of them do, and that's fine. I mean, I think that's a decision by an author or by a publishing company when they don't, but I've always loved when they do. And I spend the first 15 minutes of reading a new book, maybe longer, just like staring at the map and immersing myself in it. So when I hear the story, I know where they are, and I know where they are in reference to things. I don't know. I think maybe I got a really well-developed hippocampus, which just like maps my entire world. And when I have a map, it's just like changes my experience of a place. And so for years, I've just always created maps. I think I've created more maps all the time. I've created like 7 maps for my one fantasy series. It just kept making them better and better and better. But I didn't know about this software, Incarnate, which is awesome. And when we started talking about this world, I think just because Dillon has spent a lot of time, like the genesis of this idea came when you were in Kenya. We talk a lot about, you were talking earlier about some principles of yogis and whatnot. I end up thinking a lot about India and this sort of region of the world. So if you were to turn this on its side and compare it to a map of India, you'd see a lot of similarities down to like, here are the, I'm going to say this my way, the Himalayas. I think the climber community likes to say Himalayas, but Himalayas. And so taking some real life inspiration, but aside from the geography itself, everything on here has just, we've just kind of planted things. Often starting with when you make mountains, then there's always going to be snow in those mountains, maybe glaciers, and then you're going to have things run downhill. So then you create rivers. You have those rivers lead to oceans and lakes, and so the continent takes care of itself. So it's just, yeah, this was so fun. I probably spent maybe 20 hours making this. Down to reflection.
Reflection and infancy are my 2 favorite places. Just the verbiage.
Yeah. So mainly the story so far, book 1 takes place in Main City. Book 2 does go somewhere else. You start to glimpse somewhere else in this world. I won't spoil it. Cooper's Beast, though. I mean, we got a lot of real estate for Cooper and his flying bass.
Can we zoom in on the? Go ahead.
No, go. Yeah.
Can we zoom in on the water temple? Because from talking with, we showed Cooper this map, and we said, where do you think this beast would live? And Cooper said it could fly anywhere. Was the first thing, and I was like, okay, but where do you think his home base would be? And it came to be more of right in this bay area of the water temple near Reflection. And then through this river, if we travel west on this river, south of the Jungian forest and up to base camp. So really seeing this beast travel from rivers to ocean. And one of the things Matt and I will do, what we're going to have in the future coming out with what we call a Book of Beasts, where I'm going to come back to it, Matt, where we can take these beasts that Evan is incredibly drawn and kind of show our readers, hey, this is what the kid came up with. This is what we came up with. And with it, we're going to put our flair on it because we know the world, and we're going to tell a little story of each of these beasts. So these kids can see what they've inspired. Fully them, I don't know. But what they inspired, I think, is the cool thing. And I think that's where we're going to be able to see the power. So coming back to where Matt's talking about, we're going to see Cooper's beast kind of swimming throughout this river, helping the people around it. And as if we go back to where it lives, far east, we're really going to see, Cooper's beast, Floofy, like really like living in this area. I'm a huge Pokemon fan, and almost being the Poke Center of any explorer going out to sea. Any battles that might happen, to be able to come back and get healed, get topped off, and then be able to go back out to battle. This would really be the domain of Cooper and his beast. And if you would like to create your own beast, if you would like to sponsor a child's beast, whether a child that we've met through talking with classes, or whether a gift this to someone that you know, please feel free to reach out. If you're looking for a copy of the book for a kid, please feel free to reach out. We're going to continue to come here every other Friday and film these, and we're going to just be able to watch Evan and his mastery, where no one gets to see him, and Matt and I talking like fools, where everyone gets to see us. And we want to answer questions because we are self-publishing this. And Matt and I were talking about this, I think it was yesterday or 2 days ago, it was this morning, where we are going to give things away. We do want to let you know what is to come. We don't have the resources of a publisher to be able to put out a chapter every week and be like, oh, we'll find out as that comes. We actually want to have this be a collaborative and interactive experience throughout. So feel free to come to this and ask questions of where is the comic going? What's going on in the universe? Where is Ubuntu from? More than happy to answer it because we want to be a little bit different. We want you all to get on this. Ubuntu. We can talk about the origins of Ubuntu. So if you really like this, put questions in the group. If you're watching the replay, just throw up a status and say, hey, for next Friday, ask me anything. Here's a question I have about the writing process, about the world, about you guys and how this came to be. Invite people that you know to the group. I wrote things down. You keep seeing me look over here. Invite people that you know to the group. Ask questions that are big picture, little picture. If you'd like to purchase a book, you weren't able to get in on our Kickstarter. If you'd like to sponsor a beast, you weren't able to get in on our Kickstarter, just reach out to us. You can DM us. You can post in the group. That's it from me. We got 3 minutes. We went a little bit over. I honestly love where this beast went. And this will be the first edit. So what we do is we'll take this beast to Cooper and we'll say, what do you like? What do you not like? What do you want to see more of? And then we're almost teaching them the editing process. We then take his edits and we take them back to Evan and we shift them a little bit. Maybe next time we'll show Cade as an example, second round edits. But I love where this is going. I'm excited to see what Cooper thinks. He has not seen it yet. Evan, and then we'll go Matt. Evan, anything you'd like to add? If he doesn't like it, we got his largemouth bass. Yeah,
we're good. We're good either way. No, I mean, I think Dillon is the orator of the group. I think you pretty much said it all. I'm here for the art stuff. That's the kind of thing that I can talk about again until the cows come home. And I love to talk about it. I love to teach about it. I love to mentor about it. I love to offer critiques. It's just what I do. It gives me fulfillment from my day job. So, any art related questions, any comic art related questions, feel free to reach out. Otherwise, if you're interested in my art, feel free to find me elsewhere.
Yes. I will put another post in the group. Evan is now, I don't know if you're still doing the giveaway and for people to sign up for a chance. I'll put another post. Sweet. I'll put another post in that. Evan has awesome artwork. He obviously has a niche because we have to say what we're looking for here, but he can do a bunch of stuff for what you're looking for. A lot of D&D work if you're ever doing campaigns and you want a visual appeal for it. If you have children that are looking to get into drawing, I have a young cousin who he's 9. And he doesn't think he's an incredible artist for his age, and he beats himself up. And I think to help understand the process, if your kid is in that boat, and it's like, wow, I really want to instill what he can do to become better at drawing and how to get inspired. Bring him to these, or her to these Facebook Lives and have him ask questions. Evan is not a jerk. He's only a jerk to me. He will not be a jerk to a kid. So thank you, Evan. This is an incredible beast. Matt, in the future, also, Matt's got books. We're going to drop them as well in the group. Incredible books, nonfiction books. He's got incredible short stories that he's done for us. He has a website that he's creating for Unfound Adventures, which should be dropping hopefully soon, where you can buy books, know us a little bit more, and see everything in a pretty landscape. And then moving forward, he's going to start talking about the stories that he can see each of these beasts contributing to the greater world of Bastunia. Matt, anything you want to add before we kick it, or before we cut this? You're muted. Keep talking. Confuse people.
I'll have the website done by the end of this, next week. By the time we do another one of these, so 2 Fridays from now, it'll be up. But I think even a Friday from now. So it's unfoundadventures.com. You can check it out right now. You'll see clearly unfinished. On desktop, you can look at it. On mobile, it won't make any sense to you, so don't even look. So yeah, you can find some of the short stories. There's now 4 short stories that are on there that take place in this world in different places. 1 for builders, 1 for explorers, 1 for defenders. And then if you've read book 1, there's a story in there called Of Mice and Boys. And it's the same timeline as book 1, but from Artie's perspective. So if you love Artie, you want to see how he got to where he is today in the story, you can read that one too. And you can just, those are on the website too. You can easily find those on unfoundadventures.com.
Unfinished adventures is what someone said about your website.
Thank you. Yeah.
And I'll do my best not to swear. I cannot promise anything. I swear. I'm gonna try really, really hard though. If you backed our last Kickstarter, we should have rewards getting ready to be sent out in the next 2 to 3 weeks. I would rather under promise now and over deliver. But I have heard back from our printer. They're thinking the next week or so. So those rewards are coming. Thank you so much for your patience. Thank you so much for tuning in. People from beginning to end tuned in. It was 1 hour and 11 minutes. We'll keep them shorter in the future. We'll take some of this content, put them on our other platforms, and I will throw in the chat our link tree so you can follow us on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and Matt's personal phone number. Thank you, YouTube, for coming. I'm going to end broadcast, so just for all of us to go. I appreciate everybody. And until next time, stay unfound. I just thought of that.